All right, Frank. So tell me more about your background. What drew you to S&C and those key milestones in your career?
So I went to Columbia undergraduate, and then I went to Brooklyn Law School at night. And probably, when you go back to the early 80s, an evening student from Brooklyn Law School is not that likely to wind up at Sullivan and Cromwell or any of the other firms that I received offers at. But it was just the point at which big New York firms were really starting to expand. When I was interviewing, I interviewed at all the largest firms, and they were roughly 250 lawyers. I mean, obviously, 250 lawyers today would be a tiny firm or a mid-sized firm. And the reason I came to Sullivan and Cromwell was that everyone I spoke to, from first-year associate to senior partner, was doing a wide variety of work for different and interesting clients. At a lot of other firms, not every firm, but a lot of firms I was talking to, I would hear, well, I'm doing 6 of this type of deal, or I'm doing 3 different deals for this one client. And I knew myself. I knew that I would get bored quickly with that because I like variety. I like new things, new challenges. And so that's what attracted me to Sullivan and Cromwell. And then at the end, I shouldn't say at the end, but today what keeps me there is that I continue to work with different clients in different sectors on different types of transactions. And to some extent, now I spend a lot of time advising boards and C-suite executives. And so really, they're calling me up on, every sort of issue. Now, obviously, if it's a tax issue, I got to get my tax partners involved, or if it's an antitrust issue, the antitrust partner's involved. But I'm involved in just a lot of different things, and that's what keeps it interesting.
Awesome. And you've operated at the top of the market since then for quite some time. How have you sustained that performance, and what keeps you motivated?
Well, one of my early mentors, Ricardo Mestras, who eventually became chairman of the firm and unfortunately passed away last year, he used to say, clients may appreciate what you did for them in the past, but what they really evaluate you on is what you're doing for them today. And so whether I'm working with a client for the very first time, or I'm working with a client that I've worked with for, I have a couple of clients where I've worked with them for 40 years. And no matter what, I look at every assignment as if it's a brand new client, brand new challenge, and dive into the facts and what's interesting, and try to deliver that sort of quality service. And to be honest, one thing you get with longevity in this profession or any profession is that you've seen a lot of things. And very often what you're able to do is take a lesson that I learned maybe in one transaction, or sometimes working in non-U.S. transactions, taking things I've learned in the U.S. and applying them elsewhere, or if something I did in the U.K. Where to give you a good example, when InBev did the hostile bid for Anheuser-Busch, one of the concerns was that given the financial crisis at the time, this was 2008, that the Anheuser-Busch board might reject the bid saying, well, you don't have the financing, or it's not firm. And so what we did is we did the financing out of London, committed funds, which is what you need to do for a takeover or offer there. And the banks can't get out of that. They basically have to write the check. So doing that sort of thing has been, I think, helpful to my clients, and keeps it interesting.
Amazing outlook. And looking at your personal brand, definitely over the last 12 to 18 months, I can attest to seeing you so much on LinkedIn and giving back to the legal community. But why do you find a personal brand matters more than ever today, and how lawyers can approach it strategically?
Well, I do know that personal branding is important. I think one of the things at Sullivan and Cromwell, we look at the firm name, and obviously there are partners that are more well known, and that is, I think, very helpful to them and the firm, because it attracts work that we might not otherwise get. But the thing that we always remember is that it's the Sullivan Cromwell brand that needs to be preeminent. In terms of my activity on social media, that really is two things. One, I do like to write, and I also write a lot of articles. And in addition, I wind up waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and not much to do, and you'll see a lot of my posts, we're at 5, 6, 7 a.m. And so I'll have an idea. Maybe a client has asked me a question the day before. Maybe an associate has asked me a question, or a partner has asked me a question, and I'll take that and develop my thoughts on it. And I just put it out there. Mm-hmm.
It's always the best type of content because it's natural and it's adding value, because the chances are if someone's coming to you asking for that advice, there's something out there that also will be looking for that advice as well. Mm-hmm. So digressing slightly, what does an average day look like for you then? If you're getting up at 5 or 6 a.m. and writing those posts, like what does an average day look like for Frank?
The reality is, I don't have an average day. And, I remember my first day at Sullivan & Cromwell, I was taken to lunch by a couple of senior associates. And I remember one of them saying to me, the thing to remember is no matter how planned you think your week is, the week will never turn out the way you expected, because new transactions come in, wrinkles come in transactions that you thought were ready to sign. And so, it really does vary based upon week to week. Obviously, sometimes I know I have to go to San Francisco, or I have to go to Chicago, and you have to work around that. But typically there's no typical. Let's put it that way.
Great. And so AI is freeing associates to focus on real legal work. If you were a young associate today, how would you use AI to accelerate your development?
So, I know that a lot of people are concerned about AI and what it will do to a lot of professions. I do think that firms will not need to continue to grow at the rate they've been growing. And I think that a lot of the tasks which certain firms have really made their bread and butter out of, a lot of that may disappear with AI. In terms of the impact on younger lawyers is, I think it's going to free them to do more legal thinking. I was the head of legal recruiting at the firm for a long time, and it always, sort of the rite of passage, but it bothered me that, you were hiring the editor-in-chief of the Harvard Law Review to do document review or due diligence in their first year or so. And I think with the new era, lawyers will be able to do more substantive work. What I tell my associates is use AI, experiment with it, understand it. It's sort of like the internet was in the early 1990s. And the people who adapted to it more, the people who played with it, and a lot of it is playing, and you have to be careful. And I wouldn't suggest to anybody just let the AI write a contract for you or write a brief for court. But you can certainly use it for lots of different things, and it will take routine tasks, make routine tasks much simpler and quicker.
Great. And it is super exciting, but it is also quite terrifying. But I think
Yes.
with the right approach and the right mindset,
Right.
it can be your biggest superpower. So looking then at, there's no average day for an M&A lawyer. When you're hiring or staffing a deal, what traits do you look for and why do they matter?
So one of the things I do, and obviously, I know my partners, I know my associates, particularly the senior associates. What I do is, if there's somebody I know in the group that has a particular interest in, beverage alcohol, and we have a beverage alcohol transaction, I'm going to get them involved. Somebody may have an interest in fashion. If it's a fashion deal, we'll get them involved. So trying to align people's personal interests with the deal. Because if it's a sector you're interested in, you're going to work harder and get more into it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is thinking about the personality of the client. Now, if it's a first-time client, that becomes a little bit more difficult. But some clients, as I say, I've worked with for years. I have a very good sense of who they are, how they operate, and I know the folks in the group and try to get them. And then the third criteria I look at is if the transaction is one that is similar to something somebody recently worked on, I'll try to get somebody with that background on the deal. So I look at a lot of different metrics, but it's much more personal than technical, if you will.
It's matching people at the
Yes,
end of the day. And
exactly.
I think one of the key traits of leadership is knowing your team.
Yes.
And knowing what makes them tick. And I think being in a team like that where people show interest in your interest and then align that as per the deals that you put on, it just shows why people stay in your team for such a long period of time.
Right.
The value of having trusted advisors and the common career risk junior lawyers often take around the middle-level mark. Can we speak about that and what your thoughts are on that?
Look, I think that once someone's been an associate for, let's call it 4 or 5 years, they have a pretty good sense of what it's like to be a lawyer and ultimately a partner at a large firm, a big law firm. And I think what's important and I've seen associates sort of stick around for 7 or 8 years, and then they're up for partnership, and the last minute they're like, "No, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to go in-house, or I'm going to go teach law school." And I think what's important is that at some midway point, maybe it's the end of the 3rd year as an associate, maybe it's the end of the 6th year, depending on the individual, they really need to do a self-assessment. And are they, just staying at the firm because, in university, you go and you get your bachelor's degree, then you get your JD. Are they just going because they think partnership is what they should want? And I think it's important for people to really pursue careers and career paths that are important to them. Because ultimately, if you may make partner, but are you going to really be successful as a partner if that's not what's really interesting you? So I think whether it's government service or even a non-legal position, I think it's important for people to make that assessment, and either they're going to go for partner, and this is where they're going to be for the rest of their career, or they're going to do something else.
And looking at your career then, was there a pinnacle moment where you're like, you know what, I know I'm going to be a fantastic partner, I know I'm going to make a run for this, and this is the right platform for me?
Well, to a certain extent, I mentioned before that I was an evening student at Brooklyn Law School. So from my perspective, my plan was to stay at Sullivan Cromwell for 3, maybe 4 years, and then move on. And I looked at it almost as, it's getting almost a master's degree. I was getting a credential, and then I would use that credential within my career. I actually was there, roughly 6+ years when one of the very senior partners in the firm took me aside and basically said, you're really doing great. You're, top of your class. You're going to be a partner here in, 18 months or whatever it was. And I really then at that point, having not thought about it a lot, did an assessment. Is this really what I want to do? And, obviously this is what I want to do. And since then, during the course of my career as a partner, I've had, clients and others come to me and, come be an investment banker, come be our general counsel, come be our chief operating officer, whatever it may be. And, some of these were extraordinarily attractive offers. And ultimately what I decided was my highest and best use is what I'm doing today.
Amazing. And I think, it's an inspiration to anyone that's at that stage of their career. You can get to the top of your game with the right mindset and the right discipline and the right level of consistency when you apply yourself to one goal and not be deterred by, yes, there's going to be amazing offers along the way, but if you're truly inspiring to be this, top mark of M&A lawyer, you have to stick with it and be consistent.
Right.
The human side of deal making then. So if you're looking at cross-border M&A, it's intense and it's constant. How do the best deal makers stay calm and maintain clarity?
Well, there are a few deal makers who I rate very highly that don't always remain calm. The reality is, I think for most of us, being effective means remaining calm, remaining objective, and understanding the human side of negotiations. And I will tell you, some deal makers will yell and scream, but I've worked with them long enough to know that that's just part of their approach to negotiations and whatever, because they'll yell and scream and say it's got to be this way, and you sort of sit there quietly and say, well, no, our client's not interested in that, and suddenly they cave. And I think what's important in negotiations, particularly in big M&A transactions where it's a relatively small group of bankers and lawyers that you meet up with, time after time, is that you maintain credibility. So you don't overstate things. You keep your cards close to the vest. Be very clear about what the go, no-go lines are, and if you need to, be flexible at the end to get the deal across the finish line.
Yeah, IQ is not much without EQ.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so then looking at the next generation of lawyers, and we spoke about how AI and people who might be at the mid-level of their career thinking about what's next. Law rewards patience. And so how should ambitious young lawyers balance long-term growth and short-term drive?
So I think what's important is that young lawyers look to get as much experience as they can. And when I say that, working on different types of transactions, working with different people, working on, in different sectors. Because if you really narrow yourself very early in your career, I think that's a limitation. I mean, I did the first 2 years of my career a whole wide variety of things beyond M&A. I obviously, the plurality of what I was doing in the first few years was M&A. And I think that having a broader outlook, first of all, if you've done securities work and you need securities advice on your M&A transaction, you're going to be able to frame the questions and evaluate the responses from your colleagues much more easily if you've actually done that type of work. So really it's getting a wide variety of work, not pigeonholing yourself or siloing yourself too early. And sometimes I do see associates come in and they only want to work on public company M&A transactions. And I think that's great. Because that's really, the big part of the M&A world. But don't do that too early. Do some of those transactions, but do a variety of transactions. Do joint ventures, do sales of subsidiaries, do spin-offs, maybe do some securities transactions. Just get a wide variety of experience, because that's going to put you in good stead for the rest of your career. And the other thing is the law today, the practice today, is going to change. Maybe because of AI, but just generally it changes over time. And you can't sort of think like, well, I went to law school, I graduated, I know everything I need to know. You have to be a lifelong learner. You have to be reading and keeping up on what are the changes in the market, what are the changes in approach that's being taken in M&A deals. And there's times when credit's tight, so you need to be more focused on that. There are other times where regulatory issues are difficult. So you need to have an understanding of all the aspects that touch M&A.
I think I read one of your posts recently on LinkedIn. It was like, say yes to everything. And I think as a junior associate, that's such a big, that's a great mindset, because when you are asked to work on this deal and you've got capacity, just go for it. And, if you end up not liking that area, or at least you've tried and you've delved into it. So I think it's an important, mindset to have at the junior level of your career.
Exactly.
So you've had a front row seat to the evolution of global M&A. When the next decade is written, what will define the lawyers and the firms that win?
So it's always hard predicting the future, but as I think I'm always game for that. I think that and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, is that AI and other technologies are going to make, and they already have made, M&A different. And let me just touch on a little bit of how AI has made M&A different. In the past, a client might be looking to go into a particular sector that's maybe adjacent to it, and they might take 18 months in their corporate strategy group trying to figure out, who's the list of targets or the likely targets. Today with AI, you can do all of that work extraordinarily quickly and narrow it down to 2 or 3 or 4 potential targets. You can do a lot of the due diligence, because there's a lot of public material for most companies, and you can do that due diligence very quickly. That doesn't substitute for the actual due diligence, but you can do that in advance. Then in terms of whether it's drafting contracts or whatever, AI can be helpful in that. You can say, I want to see every contract that this particular buyer has entered into in the last 5 years. What are the key elements? Have they agreed to A, B, C, and D? And so when you sit down to negotiate with them, you already have a very good sense of what are their key issues and whatever. So I think that huge law firms that do a lot of things that can be done by AI or technology will find themselves deciding that they want to get skinnier. What's really going to prevail is what really has been the key for decades, but probably forever, is having really good and talented people. And a lot of the time that we spend is making sure that we get the best people out of law school. We get top judicial clerks after their clerkships to join us. And although we do a limited amount of lateral hiring, I think we have been very clear that we're looking for quality, not quantity, and we've been very successful in that. So I think it's having really good people, understanding the transactions, understanding the client. As I say to some of my colleagues, there's a lot of good lawyers in this world, particularly on this island, and it's easy to have a client say, I want to do this, and you say, no, you can't do that, because that's probably the right answer, but that's not a good answer for the client. The question for the client becomes, what are your strategic objectives? What are your financial objectives? And then, knowing what the law says, coming to them with solutions. And that's really where a lawyer really creates value. And AI might be able to help you a little bit in the analysis, but ultimately there's that human factor. And I think if lawyers become too automated, too reliant on technology, they're not going to have that feel for the deal and the client and the sector and the issues that you need to have. It's that human factor which is not going to go away. It's going to continue to be important, and I think the most successful lawyers and firms will be the ones that capitalize on that.
Great response. I even look at my own business, and you focus on the 3 Ps: people, product, profit. You know,
Right.
it's the people. You know, if you get that right, if you get
Mhm.
your people and your culture right, the other 2 Ps fall into place, because they are the cornerstone of your success in your business. And with AI or without AI, it's still going to be the case. And one final question. You mentioned you were the head of recruiting at S&C. If I'm a lawyer going into an interview tomorrow, what's the one piece of simple advice you would give me?
Be confident. Be clear that you're a self-starter. I mean, to be honest, you don't get to the interview stage unless, because we do preliminary interviews and then call people into the office. And so the people who are coming in, they have stellar grades undergraduate, they have top grades, top of the class at law school. So these are really smart people. And you want to differentiate yourself, not just that you're book smart, but that you're a practical person who looks for positive outcomes and alternatives.
I think it's fantastic advice, and I think you're absolutely right. The confidence going into that interview after you're getting through the first round is what will carry you through, and I think that can be understated sometimes, because I think the big brand and the big future, what a big brand represents, I think can be quite overwhelming. It's just about going in there, being yourself, and being proud of how you've got to where you are. That's it from me.
Well, great. I've enjoyed chatting with you, and maybe we can do it again sometime in the future.